Your first time in City Hall, I think
Yes.
you came in 6 months ago, straight in at the deep end to some extent. Were you expecting to be chairing a committee?
No, absolutely not. I knew I could win the seat, although it was going to be difficult. But obviously, once elected, I hadn't really given thought to immediately being asked by my colleagues to lead for Labour on the environment and energy, and then the Assembly making the decision that I would also be the chair of the Environment Committee. So, yes, that was quite a surprise.
Yeah, I mean, aside from Sadiq Khan, you were the other big story, really, at the election, because the only seat to change hands.
That's right, it was. It was the only seat that changed hands, although there are actually 10 new Assembly members, so I think that might be the largest number of new Assembly members, so at least I wasn't the only newbie when I arrived.
I'm sure everybody's looking after each other nicely in that class of 2016. Let's just look at some of the issues then for London when it comes to the environment. We'll bring in some stats for you. Well, an estimated 9,500 Londoners dying from long-term exposure to air pollution every year. Tackling toxic air is regarded one of the biggest health emergencies facing London, with an extra 269,000 flights a year predicted at Heathrow if expansion goes ahead. What are the next steps for the Mayor and City Hall in their fight against the government's preferred plan? With the so-called super sewer at a cost of £4.2 billion, will it really protect London from flooding at times of heavy rain? And as the population continues to rise, how will London keep the lights on? It is estimated the capital's energy demands could increase by 20% by 2050. There we go. A lot on your cards when it comes to the Environment Committee. We should probably start with air pollution, because it is, I imagine, the issue you're perhaps most concerned about. Is diesel the only way, banning diesel, the only way we can really tackle this major problem?
You know, every report that comes out that talks about the very tiny particles that get into our brains, the fact that children are short and they're next to the exhaust pipes and there are little particles going into them, stunting the growth of their lungs, I am moving more and more myself to the point where I'm thinking maybe the only thing that we can do is completely ban diesel from the whole of London. Now, I know the Mayor is, in the meantime, before we finally make a decision, because there hasn't been one made yet as to that as something that we will do, I think expanding the ultra-low emission zone and bringing it in earlier, and also banning a lot of the most polluting diesel vehicles, and of course he's also improving the bus fleet. I think those are all things that we need to do absolutely as soon as possible, but I think in the long run, yes, we may have to think about banning diesel.
Is he, the Mayor, to some extent stuck by the fact that he needs the government support really to do this? This is a two-pronged approach. If we really are going to do that and we're going to ban diesel, the government needs to be on board.
Well, I think the government can help, and the Mayor has certainly started calling for a new Clean Air Act, and I would encourage anyone who's listening to think about signing the petition that's on the government website to encourage the government to think about this. But yes, I mean, London can't just have a diesel scrappage scheme of its own or change vehicle excise duties. Those are national things. The Mayor can do an awful lot, and I think everything that he can do, he is going to do, but he is certainly calling on the government to join in as well. We need their help.
One of the issues around air pollution is, of course, Heathrow. If Heathrow is to be expanded, there are concerns about the amount of emissions that will create. The Assembly as a whole has been against the government's preferred choice. What is the next step now? Where do we go from here?
I think our concern, and at the last Environment Committee we called in some experts so that we could hear the latest on the impact on air pollution, the impact on noise pollution, which is another issue for many Londoners, and also the impacts in terms of the CO2 emissions as well. And those experts were saying, you know, if you go ahead with the expansion of Heathrow, the government's already just been taken to court by Client Earth in breach of their air quality action plans. Expand Heathrow, you've got no chance of meeting your targets, got no chance of cleaning up London. In terms of noise pollution, expand Heathrow, lots more people are going to have their sleep disturbed. And of course, in terms of meeting our climate commitments around CO2 emissions, expanding Heathrow is not going to be very good for that either. So I think on all of those grounds, and I'm not sure the latest reports were available when the Davis Commission made their decision to say we should back Heathrow, I think we need to be looking urgently again at the decision to expand it.
What is the environment's line to business leaders, though, who say, actually, if we don't do this, we're going to leave ourselves behind. We're not going to be able to expand the economy as we should?
Well, the Mayor has been calling, in fact, for Gatwick to be expanded because that misses so many of the issues relating to the air pollution, because there's clearly not as many people that live near Gatwick, and also the noise pollution issues. I mean, there will continue to be the CO2 issues if you expand any airports, but I think Gatwick expansion would be a much better option for London.
OK, let's move on to the super sewer. Where does the committee stand on the so-called super sewer? We should say it's got a fancy title. Is it a flood prevention lifeline, or actually is it a colossal waste of cash?
It's not really a flood prevention lifeline. It's more to do with the fact that our sewers are very, very old, and the guy who built them, Bazalgette, whose grandson I think it was who invented Big Brother, they were always incorporated the use of some of the rivers that we can no longer see, the rivers that flow into the Thames. So every time there's a big storm, we end up with the Thames very dirty, and we end up with all those little rivers that are now underground essentially being completely turned into sewers. It's not good for the fish. Anyone who falls into the river, please don't drink it. Please don't swim in it, because it is pretty grubby at the moment, let's just say that. And I think David Williams found that when he tried to swim in it. So the reason we need the new super sewer is to actually deal with the sewage rather than necessarily dealing with flooding. And of course, every time one of the reasons why the sewers overflow is because we get these this heavy increase in rainfall. So it does deal with it in a sort of a way, but it's more to do with the sewage actually.
So I'm getting from that the committee feels that it is important that we have it. However, the Londoners themselves are paying for it really to some extent because of the prices that we'll be paying on our water bills. And at the time when the Mayor was Shadow London Minister, he said that was a scandal. Now he's in position. Should he be saying, actually, no, Thames Water should be really footing the bill for this?
I think actually, you know, we're going to be using the sewer, and I think making a contribution towards it in the way that Londoners contributed towards the Olympics, in the way that Londoners contribute towards Transport for London. You know, we all pay a bit towards the policing of London as well. These are all things that we need in London, so, you know, I'm happy for us to be paying towards it.
OK, we are running out of time, but we should talk about energy. We are a growing population. We do have a commitment when it comes to carbon emissions. How do you see us balancing the act there, keeping the lights on as the city grows, but also making sure we try and tackle some of those issues with emissions?
We've just started through the committee, actually, looking at domestic energy and fuel poverty. So over the next couple of meetings, we're going to be digging into that area in some detail. So again, I would say if anyone's got any comments that they want to send in, they'd be really welcomed. One of the Mayor's pledges, which I spoke to him about before he was elected and before I was elected, was exactly about this issue about how do we insulate our homes, how do we persuade people not to turn the heating up and then walk around in shorts. So there are some things that we can personally do at home to reduce our bills, but there's still a lot that we need to do in terms of the expense of our energy bills. And one of the things that the Mayor has now been talking about is energy for Londoners. And the Deputy Mayor for Energy and the Environment is someone I've been talking to, and she's got a lot of the staff working very hard. And there will be some proposals coming forward in terms of the Mayor looking towards buying and selling electricity at a much lower price. It will be a not-for-profit energy company, and I think that will be really good for Londoners.